one of the other key symbols of this degree. On the flap of the apron is a triangle bearing the ciphered initials of not only A for Achad and B for Ben Hurim, but also SH for Shekinah. Shekinah is a feminine Hebrew word literally meaning a dwelling place, and it is used as a name for the presence of God in this world. According to Kabbalah, Shekinah can be understood as the feminine personification of the Spirit of God, the Ruach Elohim, mentioned at the beginning of Genesis, as well as the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, and the divine wisdom, Chokhmah in Hebrew or Sophia in Greek, who is clearly addressed as her in the book of Proverbs. Here is how she speaks of herself in that book. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way. Before his works of old, I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. When he set a compass upon the face of the depth. And you can hear the connection with Genesis there. Shekinah is also the pillar of smoke and flame that led the Israelites through the wilderness and appeared in the tabernacle and later in the temple above the mercy seat on the Ark of the Covenant. She is therefore called the Shekinah glory and the glory of God. Keeping in mind that Freemasons dedicate our labors to the glory of God, it should be no surprise that Shekinah has long been of interest to us. In Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, the entry on Shekinah reads, "The Shekinah was the symbol of the divine glory, but the true glory of divinity is truth, and divine truth is therefore the Shekinah of Freemasonry. This is symbolized by light, which is no longer used by us as a substitute for the Shekinah, or the divine glory, but as its symbol, the physical expression of its essence." Many years prior to Mackey's statement, Shekinah was already associated with the blazing star. Mackey wrote that in 1878, well, that's when the encyclopedia was published. But Shekinah was, as I said, many years prior to that, already associated with the blazing star of the Blue Lodge, as noted in the publication of John Brown's Master Key Through the 3 Degrees, which was published in the late 1790s. Then in 1846, the Reverend Brother George Oliver also makes this connection in an apology for the Freemasons, where he reviews the story of Genesis and says, "The Shekinah or blazing star from heaven was placed as a guard to protect the tree of life. From this Shekinah proceeded that celebrated Kabbalistical symbol of the deity called the Sephirot, consisting of 10 splendors, 3 of which are placed as the united light of God or crown of glory." In the same paragraph, after citing the Kabbalistic text Sefer Yetzirah, Oliver goes on to report this. "In one of the ineffable degrees of Masonry called Master in Israel, the blazing star is made to consist of 5 points, like a royal crown, in the center of which appears the initial of the sacred name." We should note that Master in Israel is another name for the intendant of the building degree. And the Franken manuscript of 1783 confirms Oliver's description of these symbols. Now, as a brief aside, since Oliver has mentioned the Kabbalah so clearly, and especially because the Tree of Life is so important to the Scottish Rite, we should take a moment to note some interesting parallels between the apron of this degree and the Tree of Life. So I will just point these out. As you look at the screen there, you'll notice in the flap of the apron is that triangle. And see how it parallels the upper triangle on the Tree of Life. And then as you move down on the apron, you see the 2 arms and scales of the balance scales there, the single beam scale. And you'll notice that they correspond with the 2 pillars and also allude to the middle pillar upon which those balance beams would rest. And then we've got this 9-pointed star that we use now in the ritual. And it's interesting that that parallels the Sephirah Yesod, which is the purple one down there, the next to the bottom one. And that one is considered the ninth if you start counting from the top, the first one being number 1 and counting all the way down, you get 9. So there's a real interesting parallel there. Whether that's intentional or not, I can't say. I find it meaningful whether it was intentional or not. Now, back to the blazing star. In 1850, Oliver published a book entitled Symbol of Glory, Showing the Object and End of Freemasonry, in which he quoted the lecture from a version of the 4th degree, Secret Master, which said, "I have seen a blazing star," or the Shekinah. Several paragraphs later, in his own words, Oliver says, "The primitive blazing star of Masonry had 5 points." Again, we hear him emphasizing that. Further on in the chapter, he offers this: "The continental definition is, the blazing star represents the sacred name of God as a universal spirit who enlivens our hearts, purifies our reason, increases our knowledge, and makes us better men." We should also note that, consistent with what Oliver reports, older versions of the 8th degree apron bear a 5-pointed star instead of the 9-pointed star in current use. Within that 5-pointed star are 3 Hebrew yuds, each the initial of one of the 3 sacred names spoken along with the name Shekinah at an important moment in this degree. Furthermore, the McClanahan script for the 8th degree specifies that over the master should hang a blazing star with 5 points, and in its center 3 yuds, all surrounded by an interlaced triple triangle. And then in the lecture of that version, the master also says, "You will still advance towards the light, towards that star, toward the star blazing in the distance, which is an emblem of the divine truth given by God to the first men and preserved amid all the vicissitudes of ages and the traditions and teachings of Masonry." Although we now use only the 9-pointed star in connection with the triple triangle of lights in this degree, the language of the ritual still refers to it as a blazing star and an emblem of divine truth, and still has the divine name within it. Thus, we have the blazing star present in the 8th degree in a way that clearly denotes it as an emblem of Shekinah.